Hey, welcome to the Chronicle YouTube page. I'm Busta Brown, and today I have Dr. Telika McCoy with me. How you doing, gorgeous?
I'm doing well. How
Good.
are you?
Man, fantastic. I have not seen you since the 90s.
I know, it's been a really
This
long
is
time.
crazy, right? You know, and it's cool to interview someone that I know. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting calling you Dr. Telika McCoy because it feels good.
Well, thank you.
You know, it always feels good to speak to someone that's going forward.
Well,
and PhD, that's serious, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I'm grateful for it. It was
Wow.
a lot of work.
I can imagine, man.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
A lot of work, and we'll get into that. You're from Winston?
Yes.
You went to this church we're in now, Mount Zion.
Yes, Mount Zion Baptist Church.
Yeah,
the
and
joy of the whole earth.
There you go, man. And we're right there near Cleveland.
Right.
What's up, Cleveland? I'm here. I was here like once a year. Ms. Lyles used to be a part of the
Right. She was there working with the daycare.
the daycare.
Yes.
And every time she turned another year, I was here to do her banquets.
Okay.
And so rest in peace, Ms. Lyles.
Yes.
Over 100.
Mm-hmm.
That's
a lot
serious,
of, I know,
right?
That's a lot of years.
That's serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like growing up in Winston-Salem for you?
Well, you know, my parents, I lived in Winston-Salem over not too far from here
Right.
for some time. And then my parents moved us out to Pofftown, North Carolina,
Okay.
which is a rural area.
Yeah.
But we would always come to Winston-Salem to go to church,
Right.
you know, and many of my family members lived in Winston-Salem. But I grew up mainly in the rural area. But being in Winston-Salem, it's a wonderful thing. It's a small town with big people.
With big people.
Yes.
At Pofftown, where is that? Walkertown and Pofftown kind of.
No, Pofftown is more so if you get on, do you know where Renolda Road is?
Yeah.
Okay, you
Yeah.
have to keep going. Get on
Okay,
Renolda Road
okay.
and keep going.
Cool.
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever been to, I see it all the time since I did traffic and stuff
Oh,
for
yeah.
WXI and stuff and traffic for the radio stations, but I've never been to Pofftown.
Yes, it's nice. I mean, when you see a cow, you're in Pofftown.
You're in Pofftown. Okay. I always thought that's where P. Diddy was from. Poff Daddy. Get it? And don't worry about it.
Okay.
I'm
yeah,
so
okay.
corny. You know, silly that.
It's okay.
I've been silly a long time.
I've known you a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm used to it.
So you wrote a book, Telika.
Yes, I did.
A
I wrote
book, and it's called That Kid.
That child.
Oh, that child. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sitting there looking at it, and
And
it's
you
saying
see
that child
kids.
big.
Yes,
and,
but you see kids.
That child.
Yes.
That's serious. What is that child about?
Well, the full title of the book is That Child,
Right.
Preparing for Challenging Moments with Youth.
Right.
And so the book is designed for anyone who knows a child. Not just people who have children, not just people who work with children, but people who know a child.
Right.
And so the book is designed to help us to be more effective when we deal with children.
Gotcha. And why did you call it That Child?
Well, because growing up, I've heard adults say, I tell you, that child, that child, I mean,
That's good.
It's common,
That's
you know,
good.
I think anyway, you know, being here in Winston-Salem, I've heard people say that child.
Right.
So that inspired me.
Right. And you know what's cool about it? Growing up hearing, oh, that child right there, right?
Yes.
You end up developing a heart for that child.
That's right.
And a love for that
right.
child.
And you realize that if you think about your own childhood, you were
that child, right? And Dr. McCoy decided, let me get people to understand that child.
That's right.
And then you put this book together, which is fantastic. The book is good for parents, local leaders,
Yes.
youth leaders, youth pastors,
Right.
anybody that deal with youth.
That's right.
This book will help them help and understand that child, because a lot of times that child get left out. When that child mess up, nobody want to hear nothing that child have to say. It's your fault. Don't want to hear it.
Yes.
You know you that child, right? Tell us about that child. What you've learned about that child that'll help us.
Well,
understand that child.
first, the thing I had to really think about is that I was that child.
Right.
You know,
I know I was.
For
I
the-
still am.
I mean, and you know, we all have our own stories
Yeah.
when we say that we were that child.
Right.
For me, I was that child who actually, when I would read a book, I had to read some of the sentences more than once because I didn't comprehend what I read. So I was that child who needed a little more help in class.
Right.
I was that child who needed to be inspired that I could actually do something like write a book. I was that child that some people would say could never write a book.
Wow.
Yes. So, thinking about reading comprehension and all those things, I was that child. So the idea is when you read the book is to get in tune with what type of child you were.
Right.
And who you would have wanted, when you were a child.
Right.
Who do you kind of wish you had around when you were a
Right.
child? Doesn't mean you didn't have good people around, but who was that person that was missing? And if people were around, what didn't they give you? So hopefully the book will inspire you to give what you did not have.
To that child.
To that child.
And your bachelor's in sociology.
Yes.
So that helped you
Yes.
understand that child. And then your PhD, Human Services,
Yes.
that helps you understand that child and that parent
Yes.
as well. And this is a book is going to do what for us? It's going to help us understand that child, but can you give us some tips from this book that people that are watching can apply to that child in their life?
Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, let's consider chapter 2. Chapter 2 is entitled the When I Was Young
Right.
tactic. And I talk about how to apply that when I was young. I'm sure that many people remember someone saying to them,
Right.
when I was young. So I, in chapter 2, talk about it as a tactic, as an approach. Because I think that people who mean well, when they say that, they mean to apply that in a way to enlighten a young person. But sometimes we don't apply it the right way. We may say, if we use the when I was young tactic in a way to say, my generation was better than yours. Or my generation was stronger than yours. Well, when I was young, we didn't have calculators. We did it in our heads. Well, think about how that sounds to that child that you're dealing with.
Wow.
It sounds more like we're pitching one generation against another. But rather than burning bridges, what I try to do, even in that chapter, is to give the do's and don'ts so that we can bridge the gaps between generations. So it's not that you don't apply your past experience. You should do that. It's not that you don't relate yourself, to the kids, but your good old days that are gone, guess what? Today is their good old days. So to simply say something like,
Oh, that is so good.
So that's this is their good old days. So I talk about that in chapter 2, how to apply the when I was young.
That is so good. While you're saying that, myself and others are saying, I just said that to my kids. I just said that to my students,
Yes.
my children. I'm always saying, when we were younger, there's no way. I just don't remember when I was younger thinking this way, right?
And it's not a problem
Wow.
to say it,
Wow.
but like many things, it's the way that you
It's the
apply
way you
it.
apply it.
Because young people, many times they tell me, Dr. McCoy, I feel like I'm being judged all the time. And many times adults, we don't listen to understand young people.
Right.
We listen to respond to them.
Wow.
And it is true. No one is born wise. That's an African proverb. That is
Right,
true. No one is born wise. But be patient with me as a young person as I journey through these different levels of human development.
Let me ask you something personal,
Okay.
very personal. For a guy like me who help youth on a regular basis, whether it's prison, detention, I'm always helping kids. To this day, I will see people that say, my son is a doctor because of you. My son is a lawyer because of you. You went to his class. Chris Lee at WXI right now, I told him about how I got started in radio because of this guy I saw, and I wanted to be him. And he said, can I tell you how I got started? I'm like, yeah, how you got started? He said, when I was 8 years old, this guy named Busta Brown came to my class,
Wow.
and I wanted to be him.
Wow.
Hear that all the time. But I miss the boat with my own children sometimes. Why? Why am I missing the boat with them?
Well, sometimes
Because I'm like, how my own
they don't hear
children
you. They
are
don't-
not understanding what kids are. What am I doing?
But sometimes kids need a relationship with another trusted adult.
Okay.
You are a trusted adult and you are their parent.
Right.
So sometimes when they see you, they see the person that's rearing them, that's feeding them, but someone even outside of their home, may have a different perspective. And so we have to welcome those people into our environments and call them trusted adults. So it's not that they don't hear you, they just don't hear you sometimes in the same way. Now, as they grow older, they'll remember what they heard.
Right.
So they're hearing
Right.
you, because what you're doing is you are diverting them on the right path.
Planting seeds.
Exactly.
So we as parents,
Yes.
myself, have to be patient.
That's right.
And I tell you this, I'm glad you said that, because now you made me flash back to something. And starting today, I'm going to step back a little bit with my boys. They'll be 18 this year.
Okay.
My oldest son, who's 39 this year, he said to me what you're saying. He said, Dad, I'm moving out, and I know you've been trying to keep me hostage forever. You're just going to have to trust what you've done, and everything you raised me to be. It's time to trust it. And he is the best man I know on earth.
Wow.
Is my own. Isn't that weird? I'm still a work in progress. This dude is a beast. This dude said that I pray to God twice if a year, because there's so many people that need so much more from me, from God, than I do. And I thought, wow. He said, so I just figured the best blessing God could have given me is his ear. Not things, just his ear. Because if you talk to God enough, you can work through anything. And the only other person I've ever heard to say that was Donald Trump.
Okay.
That crazy Donald Trump said,
Yeah.
I never ask for forgiveness after a mistake, because there's so many people that need so much more than I do. I'll try to work my mistake out unless I truly need God for something big.
Wow.
That's deep.
Wow.
And my son said that. So I'm glad we talked about that, because I'm thinking, okay, he said, trust what you put in me.
That's right.
You're saying, and you have
to trust your parenting.
Right.
Many people want to be good parents, but they don't give themselves the opportunity to sit back and watch
Right.
that they have become good parents. So you have to give yourself an opportunity
we're afraid.
see. Yes, but you have to see that seed spring up. So you have to give it a little time to grow.
Right.
And it sounds like you've diverted your son into the way of wisdom, because there's an African yes, but there's an African
I got two
proverb.
more.
Well, the other two. It says this. It says
I'm playing, y'all.
It says a fool and water will go in the way they are diverted. So water will go in the way they are diverted. So we know we don't want to raise fools. We don't want to rear fools. We don't want to mentor fools. We want them to be wise. So we have to divert them into the right way and trust that we've done a good job. And so many people, I wrote this book because so many people have the right intentions. They just need a push, they need some tools, and then they need a break.
Right.
They need to breathe, and then they need to get back in there. So hopefully it'll be a tool set.
Why do we need a break? Explain that part, because you got everybody's attention when you said that break. Explain that part.
Well, I think that we don't allow ourselves to take breaks because we feel guilty. Because, as a parent, you're a parent. Yes, you're a parent 24/7. So when people hear me say, well, Dr. McCoy, you're talking about taking a break. I can't take a break. Well, think about something that your kids enjoy doing and let them do it. While they're doing that,
take your break.
Take your break. So if you want it, so many parents are good parents to where they want it to be about their children. Well, make it about your child. Let him, play basketball for an hour. That's your break.
Get your break.
That's an example.
Good.
Sometimes, we don't think about some of those simple things. And that's why I tried to write the book as simple as possible.
Right.
Well,
anybody can relate to it.
Yes.
That's good.
That's
good. And one of the things, since we've been talking, and even off camera, that I've noticed that you're Dr. McCoy, but you're still relatable. You're still the same person. You still have the same heart. And for those who are watching this video, this is a book that I think you must have, not because you're here to promote the book. She loves people. She has a passion for our children. And I know this just talking to you. And I don't get a chance to meet the authors that write books about children. So I don't get a chance to trust them like that. But I know you and I trust you. And I want people who are watching that know Busta Brown. Trust me, this is a must have in your household. I think they can believe that based on what you're sharing right now with us and the information you shared with us. I'll ask you this, with your experience at studying families, children, and that child could be a girl or a boy.
That's right.
Do we raise and treat that child different because of a boy or a girl? If so, explain. You understand the question? Right.
Well, I used to say that there is no different. You just raise your child. I do believe you raise them according to their personalities.
Okay.
But let me say this. One of the things as a little girl that I remember being told is that I could be anything. As a little girl, I could be anything I wanted to be. But then as I got older, one of the things, Buster, that I felt called to do is to be a preacher. But what I learned when I became an adult is that as a woman, I really can't be everything I want to be. So I would say to people who have girls, ask yourself, as you're telling your child that she can be anything she wants, are you preparing her for a world who's going to tell her that she can't? So I'm answering your question in a way to say, there will be different ways to raise them because of gender,
the different
norms,
challenges they're going to take.
you know,
I got you.
It's going to be the reality.
Right.
When I was young, I thought I could be anything.
Right.
And that everyone would embrace it because I had the right kind of heart and the right intention. But the more you live, you realize that some of the choices you make to be, you're contrary because of religion, because of, belief systems and values. So I would say to those who have girls, be extra careful, because one day she wakes up and she realizes that I can't really be what I want to be without some type of conflict. And that doesn't mean that boys don't deal with the same thing.
Right.
But what I'm saying is we socialize our boys differently sometimes than we socialize our girls.
Right. Oh, you can be anything.
Yes.
And that's it.
And that's it. So.
And when they go into the world, they can without.
Yes.
The obstacles you're talking about.
Right.
Oh, that's so good.
And so I'm not saying these things to right now,
so good.
pitch male against female.
No,
I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you're a child, you're told that you can do anything. But so my question and my challenge to parents is, can your child really do anything?
Right.
And if you believe that they can, prepare them for a world who will tell them that they really can't. Right. Because of their gender, or because of their sexual orientation, or because of their race, or because of their height, or because of the way that they look, or because of the texture of their hair, or the spread of their nose, and the fullness of their lips.
Right.
Just prepare your child.
That's good.
So this book is intended to prepare you. It's preparing for challenging moments with youth. But it's to prepare our children.
It also helps us. This book is also real good at, and I'm getting to just a little bit because I know we got to save something for the book so they can get the book. And I can ask her this because she's a preacher. Been so for a while. Graduated from divinity school, so got your master's. Everything's not spiritual.
Yeah.
Some things just genetic, biological. Talk to the Christians that's watching, because you can. I can't, and everybody else can. No, it's the devil. It's a spirit. Talk to us Christians that everything's not spiritual and what that means.
Right. I would say that it wasn't until I became a chaplain and provided people with spiritual care, not religious care, but spiritual care, where I was challenged to provide spiritual care to people regardless of religious affiliation or none at all. And the challenge was, can I still provide spiritual care to a person who doesn't believe in God or a person who believes something different than I do? And so I learned that working with people, for example, with bipolar disorder, different types of mental illness, I learned more about those things and how, indeed, some things are biological. It's not the devil. They're not demon possessed, And even in the Black community, we don't like to talk about mental illness. I know
it's taboo.
I know quite a few people who are mentally ill, and there are those who will say, well, I don't believe in that. Well, you don't have to believe in it if you don't want to believe in it. But when someone needs help, take them to somebody who does believe in it so that they can get help. As long as you're willing to serve people regardless of some of your beliefs, then I think that you'll satisfy the universe, because I don't think that God is going to say to us, well, you didn't love the white supremacist, and I'm glad, or you didn't love the gay person, and I'm glad, or you didn't love I believe that God is going to look at each and every one of us that God created and say, I am love, and I'm so proud of you for loving.
That's good.
So I just had to really broaden my scope. But I have to say, I admit again, it did not really happen until I became a hospital chaplain. And I was pastoring people in that context.
So you had to deal with it firsthand.
Yes, absolutely. I had to deal with, I had children who were mentally ill.
Wow.
Children who had attempted suicide.
Right.
And of course, I would pray with them and all those things, and I had to listen to their story.
Right.
And the more I listened, the more, even if I didn't understand, the more I respected.
Right.
So there are a variety of things happening. The human condition is multifaceted.
Right.
And the more we listen to one another, I think we grow.
Wow.
And it's not always about understanding. Again, it's not always about understanding, but it is about respect and
respect and fairness.
Yes.
Yeah. I know the Chronicle. I'm new with the Chronicle.
Okay.
But the paper's been around a long time.
Yes.
So we have I know there's a lot of people that are Christians that's watching this now and that read the paper. Where is that cutoff, or is there, to Christian counseling versus telling people or suggesting you need to go get some professional help? Because you have pastors that are counseling couples, married people before they get married. Their church members are sending their children to the pastor so pastor can talk to them. Can that be dangerous? I mean, real talk.
Well,
if they don't have the professionalism and the research like you do to handle that, could that be dangerous?
Well, I think that any type of counseling can be dangerous in the hands of a person who does not understand, again, human conditions, broadly.
Right.
There are many pastors who are great at pastoral care and counseling.
Right.
And many Christians want pastoral care and counseling.
Right.
They want it to come from a Bible-based Christian perspective.
Right.
So you get that when you have a trained pastor, who is really open, to what the Word of God says.
Right.
That's so important. And then we also have other resources that God has blessed us with. There are Christian people who are therapists. They may not be pastoral care counselors in such a way as that, but they went to school to be therapists.
Right.
So we should use that resource. There are people in this church, Mount Zion. There are people in my church back home in Mount Peace who are very qualified to counsel, and they're not pastors.
Right.
So we just need to be open as Christians to accept all of the blessings that God has for us.
Right.
There is such a broad scope.
And I like that, but what you say, I want to make this clear. What you're saying is that we have to be open to all that God blesses, not just Christian counseling.
Yes, because again, there are Christians who are counselors, and they're outside of churches.
Right.
So, I can't be a Christian and be a counselor.
And be a counselor.
Of course I can.
Now, if you're not a Christian, but you are a counselor, you still can be of help to someone.
I believe that because God breathed life into humankind, into man, there's a piece of God inside of all of us.
But if you are a Christian, are you saying that it's okay, it's wiser to seek a Christian therapist versus just...
I think it depends on what your needs are. Okay. There's so many types of counselors out there. If you're having issues in your marriage, you're going to go to a marriage counselor, versus if you're dealing with bipolar disorder, this therapist may not focus. So you have to do your research. Yes. And so,
that's why I say it could be dangerous, because sometimes our pastors they're not qualified for that kind of stuff. Sometimes.
And many of them will admit that they're not. But a
lot don't.
Right. But there is a responsibility, that pastors have to counsel their flock. As the shepherd of that church, there is a responsibility.
Okay.
And so God gives people the right words to say. And if we as ministers humble ourselves, we know when it's time to
That's my
sit.
point.
Yes. So that
That's
discernment is what pastors have, but people have to trust that.
Right.
And many times people don't trust pastors. They don't trust their local minister, and they go out and they go to all these different people. But like you say, don't go to people, go to God.
Go to God.
And who represents God in the community?
The people.
But the pastor.
The pastors, right? My bad. Yeah. Good
So,
stuff.
so it's just important.
And the pastors also have a responsibility, because I want to make this clear, because I know so many people that go to pastors and the pastors will give them a personal opinion, and it can be misleading sometimes. And they'll share how you should stay in your marriage based on their personal,
right?
And that could be dangerous.
It can be,
and that's all I'm saying is that
be.
When the pastor trusts in God, and you made it clear that he or she would know this is above where I can take you.
You know, it's like some people say that's above my pay grade.
Right.
You know, because even myself, I have a PhD in human services, but that does not mean that I can counsel the entire world.
Exactly.
You have to know your limitations.
Know your limitations.
That does not
even as a pastor.
Right,
that's
right.
It.
And again, I believe that the pastors who truly have a heart for people, you know, and there are many of them, they do that. They do that. The majority, they do that. They understand their limitations, and we will look up other resources, for people, because the point is to serve. It's not always about who's doing the serving, and that's part of the problem with our world.
Right.
We're so focused on, well, this person should be doing this, and this person should be doing that.
Right.
The PhDs should be doing that, and the pastors should be doing that, and the deacons and the people in the street. We all are called to serve.
That's right.
So if we all get on board and do our part, it'll be great.
And take our responsibility in building that relationship as well. We talked about that before the cameras came on.
Right.
Be responsible for your relationship with God as well.
Exactly. Be responsible, because we're so preoccupied, some of us, some of the time, preoccupied with what everybody else is doing.
Right.
And even in those times, guess who's really suffering? It's our youth.
Our youth.
It's our youth. And we say many times it takes a village to raise a child, but everyone's waiting to see who's a part of the village.
Right.
You are the village.
How do we know? This is back on that child, because as you can see, that was personal with me.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's very personal.
That's fine.
Because I'm a trip. I just like I love when I talk to pastors and bishops, so that they could talk to others and say, hey, he's right about this. Be aware of this.
Right.
Because I have these conversations all the time. They're Busta. So let's get back here. We know what happened in Florida.
Yes.
It happened in our neighborhoods on a regular basis. So it's just a shame that we just don't get that kind of coverage and love and support. But we're here. What are some of the signs that we should look for as parents? Because sometimes, as a parent, we can be in denial. Not my baby.
Right.
And we'll overlook it. He's just being young. What's some of the signs we should look for? Give us 3 that, hey, we need to get him some help.
I would say if your child is distant, and I know some parents will say, well, I have a teenager. Of course they're distant. But you know your child. You know what unhealthy distance looks like. I'm not talking about they want to hang out with their friends. That's a teenage thing. But if they are unusually distant, that's something you should consider. Wow. That's the first thing. They're unusually distant. And then the other thing, hopefully you're a parent who asks your child about their day. So the question is, what are you doing as a parent? Because you can only find out if they're distant and what's going on if you're listening to what's going on with them.
Wow.
And I'm not talking about what kind of homework do you have today. No, not that. I'm not talking about when are you going to wash the dishes. Not that. But a genuine concern about the activities of their day. And if you do that now, the moment when they're not able to really say a lot or they don't want to share,
you're going to notice something.
That's a red.
And let's throw this in there. Off camera, something Dr. McCoy said was, listen without an agenda.
Yes, absolutely.
Listen without looking forward to responding. I love when you thank you for blessing me with that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because even as adults, when we talk to one another, I'm enjoying this interview because I feel like it's an even exchange.
Right.
But sometimes adults don't give the opportunity of an even exchange with a child. Because if I'm listening to a child, it's the same thing as, doing what they say. When we think about listening to someone,
I never looked at it that way. Wow,
and I talk about that in the book. If I listen to you, that means that
I'm doing what
you're telling me what to do.
And I'm giving you control.
Right.
So say what you got to say, get out the way, because I have the answer.
Absolutely.
Wow, and you said don't do that.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And so you have to think about how it makes you feel when someone does you that way.
Wow.
Did you really hear me and listen to me? Or are you just trying to direct me? And I know you're rearing your child.
Right.
This is a human, though. And for Christians, when we think about Christianity, we think about Christians, even the Bible tells us that we are not our own. We were bought with a price. So we don't even belong to ourselves. Your child doesn't belong to you.
Right.
God bless you with that child, to care for that child. But just like so many people in the Bible, they gave their children back to God.
Right.
So just a genuine concern about their day. So if they're unreasonably distant, if they're not talking to you anymore about their day, and I guess the last thing I would say is if you see them, if there's these self-destructive activities going on, we don't always talk about things like cutting. You need to check your child out,
Look at the body part.
Because they may not be, every child is not on drugs. Every child is not, smoking and things, but they may be desecrating their body. What about that?
Right.
Look at your child. Have a genuine care, again, about your child. We feed our children. We give them somewhere to live. We take them to school. We make sure they do their homework. But just the actual overall care of a child.
Check
I'm
their
talking
social
about
media.
I'm talking about their mental state, their physical, state. Spiritually, we do well when we take them to church, take them to Bible study. That's good. And then emotionally, one of the things I remember adults saying when I had a relationship as a young person was, "Oh, that's just puppy love." I remember them saying that. And I understand.
But you remember what you felt.
But I remember what I felt.
And so did I.
Don't discount my emotions.
So good, Telika. Wow.
Don't discount my emotions. So I know where you're coming from, but think about all of those things that people said when you were young. Remember how they made you feel? Don't repeat that behavior, And so those are the three things that I would, I would give.
Check their social media.
Yes, absolutely.
What do we do when we see something crazy? I mean, I'm talking consistently crazy on their social media.
Right.
What do we do? How do we handle it to where they don't feel like we're coming at them?
Yes.
How do we handle that?
Say it was
that dude had guns.
Okay. Let's use that.
Some girls have sexual stuff on there.
Okay. Let's use violence, like gun violence or something like that. Okay. If we use gun violence, what I would say is pull up a similar image or video. You and your child, you're sitting there watching it. You already know it's going to be vulgar, but they've already seen it anyway, right? Or something like it. You don't have to show them exactly what they've seen, because then, that's a whole different conversation. Pull up something like it and sit there and watch it with them. And then at the end of the viewing say, "Wow, that was heavy." That was heavy. What do you make of that? How do you feel about that?
They know better.
But how do you feel about that? That doesn't sound judgmental to me in my ears. You have to think about the way in which you talk to them and you ask them questions.
Wow.
It's just like a marriage. If two people are married, depending on how you pose the question, a woman could say to her husband, "Where have you been?" Or she could say, "Where have you been?" So to ask the child, "What do you think about this?" Not, what do you think about this?
That's good.
So we need to be a little more soft, we need to show love in a broader way, not just you feed me and you provide me with shelter. I mean, of course, you're a parent, that's what you do. But a broader type of love, and then patience.
Right.
Be patient with your child. I mean, your child is 12, 13, 14.
Right.
I mean, they're not your age. They couldn't possibly know. What is that African proverb? No one is born wise. If you know that, stop treating young children like they're wise.
Wow.
We say things like, and I say this in the book, we'll say on one hand, "You ought to know better." Then we'll turn around and say, "Stay in a child's place." Okay, which one is it? I ought to know better because I'm a certain age, and or stay in a child's
Stay in that mature mind of yours.
I mean,
you just told me I know better. Now you're telling me I'm not mature. That's so good, Dr. McCoy.
I mean, it's just, and I think that a lot of what I'm saying, people are probably laughing
Oh,
because
gosh.
you know.
They're
that
laughing
people
saying,
say-
that's me.
That's me. I mean, if
Wow.
someone said that to you or,
Yeah.
so it's just kind of
Wow.
conflictive to tell me to stay in a child's place.
Wow.
But then I'm sitting in the room when you're talking to your friends, and I'm hearing adult conversation.
Right.
But then I'm supposed to stay in the child's place. But you just expose me to these things.
Wow. Ooh.
I mean, it's just, and being a parent or a youth leader, because this is not just about parents. It's about school teachers. It's about youth
This
leaders.
book can help
anyone,
anybody
anybody who knows a child.
who knows a child.
So it's not just about, church leaders. It's not just about teachers. It's not just about parents. It's about all of us who care about our children.
Two last questions. Two final questions here. The first one is, should we, because we hear this all the time, and I want to know this personally.
Okay.
Since I have you here, I need help too.
Okay.
People always say you shouldn't be your children's friend. I am my children's best friend. I don't remember a weekend I had without my children. They're 18 now.
Okay.
I love hanging with them, right? When we were talking, my son called.
Right.
Dad,
You
I
did.
got a scholarship to this college. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'll holler at you when I get home.
Right.
My other son texts, you coming to the game, right? These are my boys. Should we be our children's friend? Because I love it. But people telling me, you shouldn't. They should know that line.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that most of us don't even know the definition of a word friend.
Mm.
The word friend is used so loosely, almost like the word love. We think friends are people on Facebook. You send somebody a request, and guess what they become?
Friend.
They become your friend. I think that the relationship between friends sometimes is so trivial that we don't really know the depth of a friend.
Yeah.
So who is to say what your definition of friend is with your children?
Yeah.
I think that we put pressure on ourselves when we try to live by, what the world says, for example, a friend is. If you have a relationship with your children and it's working, don't let someone on the outside come in and run your house. That's what I would say about that.
Right.
Because most
Why do
people
you
don't
think
understand.
people say you shouldn't? How do you help those who believe that's the best way? What do you say in their defense?
Well, those who believe it's the best way, I would assume, which I can't speak for everyone out there, but I would assume when they think about friend, they think about someone that they, go out to dinner with, they go to a movie with, someone that they go on vacation with. And what you're saying, what I hear you saying is, well, that's what I do with my kids.
Right.
So again, you have to make your own definition for what friend is. And if definition of friend for you is someone who is an adult, then that means you don't be friends with your children because they're not adults.
You shouldn't do adult things with them.
You should do adult
I
things
got you.
with your children.
Right.
But again, I can't presume to know what people out there think
Gotcha.
a friend is,
Gotcha.
but I will challenge each and every one of us to create our own definition of friend. And when you do that, and I'm talking about beyond Facebook, when you create your own definition, instead of living by the definitions of the world, what they place on you,
Right.
then you'll be more effective. So
That's good.
you have to live your life from the inside out more than the outside in.
That's good.
We live so much from the outside in. We let
Right.
everything on the outside inform, what we do, how we raise our children,
Right.
how we're in our relationships, how we go to school. And I'm not saying there aren't some good things, that we can pull
You can find some good things,
from
yeah.
outside.
But
so many answers for your life, guess where they are?
Yeah.
They're right
Right.
here.
Right.
So you have to really be able to listen to that inner voice
Right.
and to say, this activity or this conversation that I'm having with my child is effective
Because I know
for
my
my
child.
raising my
That's
child.
good.
So you have to know that child
Right.
enough,
That child.
yes, to be effective as a parent, as a youth leader,
Right.
wherever you are with children.
That's the same thing spiritually too, because if you don't have an inner harvest first, you're not going to be able to appreciate that outer harvest.
That's right.
You're going to totally blow your money and Yeah, all that good
exactly.
stuff. So
and if you don't
so
have
good.
that even now, as I'm sitting here
That's
and
good.
talking, everything I say, you'll just take it and just apply it.
Right.
But everything I say may not be applicable to
you,
your relationship
to that
with
child.
that child.
That's so good.
So
That's so
you
good.
have to do the hard work.
You have to
I
do
mean,
the
I
hard
can
work.
provide tools, I can write a book, but at the end of the day, they're in your classroom. They're in your church.
Right.
They're in your house.
Right.
You know that child.
And as a pastor, you would suggest that with us as your flock.
Absolutely.
Just because I'm preaching this word doesn't mean you shouldn't research it and develop a relationship.
That's
on
what
your
you
own.
need to do.
That's
I mean,
good.
it's so important, that we take responsibility for our own
For
lives,
ourselves.
for our own relationships. People can write books, they can preach, they can teach, and all these things. But if you are a Christian, the Bible tells us that the greater one lives inside of you. So if the greater one is inside of you, it's greater than me. It's greater than this book. It's greater. I mean, the greater one
That's
is
good.
inside of
It's
you.
inside of you.
So, I mean, you have so much already in there.
Right.
So this book is just designed to help you pull those things
That
out.
greater one out of there.
Yes, and to give yourself a break.
The greater one is in that mirror every morning.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And before you go to sleep. I love when you said the greater one is inside of you, meaning that person in the mirror. Every night, every morning, you see that person. That's the greatest person right there. I love that. The last question I want to ask you, Dr. McCoy, is how do we engage our children to be more excited about God? We seem to be losing that because everything else is making our children feel free. Because that's all children want to feel is free. They're children. They should feel free to be who they are, explore and grow and say, oh, that didn't work. And isn't it our job to say, it's okay that didn't work. Now let's try this instead of, right? So how do we make God cool? Like, how do we engage our children to enjoy coming to church? We need more of them in there, and we're losing them.
I agree. I would say that, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of viewers have heard before, but I would say teaching more about relationship, than religion. Religion is important. I'm not saying don't teach about what Christianity is. I'm just saying it wasn't until I started to develop a relationship with God that I became a better Christian. I worked out my religion based on the relationship with the one, you see. So it wasn't until I realized that it really wasn't just about a whole lot of do's and don'ts, but it was about a God who loved me so much that he wanted me to wake up and think about him. A God who loved me so much that he wanted me to walk around and talk about him. A God who loved me so much that he wanted me to be more and more like him. And then I get to be called the light of the world. That is what changed my view of church. So then I would say we have to be so careful to teach our children that church is very important. You need to go. But what about this? Have you ever seen a cereal commercial? The commercial is about the cereal. But at the end of the commercial, they'll say Lucky Charms, part of a balanced breakfast. Why? Because it also has a glass of orange juice there. It has a glass of milk, and it has some toast. Because alone, the Lucky Charms is not a balanced breakfast. It's part of a balanced breakfast. So then thinking about church is part of a balanced spiritual life. You come to church, that's great. That's like the Lucky Charms, if you will. But then you read your Bible, that's the orange juice. You serve God, that's the milk. You talk about Jesus Christ to people who don't know and those who do, that's the toast. And so then all together it comes. And you have a balanced spiritual life, which breeds a strong relationship with God.
That's good.
That's what God wants.
So we have to teach our children about the balance.
We
have to be the balance.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because some people use religion in a negative way. I mean, there were those who were slave owners who used religion, to keep slaves under control, if you will. So it's not just about religion then. It's about relationship. But the slaves tapped into that relationship.
So it's up to us.
Absolutely. To tap in and to say, wait a minute, God really cares about me so much that I care to be more like God.
That's good.
Wait a minute, God loves me so much that I want to love people. Oh, wait a minute. God is thinking of me so much that there's a bird and there's the sun and there's the wind.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing God. And when you experience a good relationship like that, you want to come to church.
You want to come.
But kids, sometimes all they hear
They're not
is do's and don'ts and this and that. Like, it's so restrictive. But being a Christian, you don't become alive until you have that relationship.
That's right.
So who wants to be in a relationship with someone that they're afraid of?
Exactly.
I mean, would you really want to be in a relationship with someone that you're scared?
You're walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
no.
so
and that's what kids are feeling.
absolutely.
Oh, God. Thank
so
you, Doc.
they're friends with certain people because those friends make them feel loved.
And that's why they feel
And
so
accepted.
free with that hip hop
Absolutely.
culture. They make them feel free.
Absolutely.
Unjudged.
Yes.
Wow.
So God is all of those things. God, wrath, judgment. That is so true. And then God is love, and God is peace, and God is joy. God is
Fun.
exciting.
Cool.
So just incorporating a lot of those cool things,
Right.
you know, into even our church experiences. For example, I'll give a real example, so it won't just sound like I'm just talking. Let's say that with the shooting, you know, that happened not long ago in Florida, like we talked about earlier. Even with your, I don't know, with your kids in a youth group, you know, you could possibly have a conversation about that. And in the Old Testament, there was war, you know, people were killed. Murder was common in the Bible.
Right.
See that? And there was murder that took place not long ago.
Wow.
We could talk, the Bible gives us permission to talk about so many different topics.
Anything.
Things that are going on in their good old days. Bad thing happened, but it's still their good old days. So how do you talk about biblical truths and principles along with the world that these kids are living in?
Wow.
Because they're
It's there in the Bible.
Absolutely.
But you have to care enough to go.
And you have to read the Bible.
Right.
I mean, you know, you read it and you find that these things are there. These things are not new.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
And Solomon said that nothing new under the sun.
Nothing is new. So
Yeah,
for all
that
those
is-
all those Bible scholars out there, and I know they're out there, you know, get excited about, you know, making these Bible studies, you know, exciting and relatable.
Oh, that's so
I mean, it's just so much, you know, that we can give our children.
Right.
We just have to humble ourselves and be willing to grow past what we know now.
Right.
So it's great that you know what you know now, but even going past what you know, that's
Right.
the challenge. Do you want to know more? Do you want to be better? It's a lot of work, but our children are worth it.
That's good stuff. Dr. McCoy, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That child is going to be blessed because of you.
Well, to God be
Thank
the
you.
glory.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
you. This is Dr. McCoy. Get her book, That Child. There it is right there. You can see it. How do we get the book?
You can go to Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Right.
It's out there online. If you see me, I always carry copies in my trunk.
There you go.
I'll sign it for you.
There
And the
you
book
go.
is $12.
That's not.
So,
It's worth 40 and 50,
well, thank you.
if not 100. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Keep up
much.
the good work.
Thank you.
All
You
right.
too.